Hey everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus with a special video presentation for this Wednesday. This particular video set, we're going to be doing a bunch of matches between Boros Burn here and against Azorius Control. Someone requested to see a bunch of the Burn versus Azorius Control matchup. As a warning, this video is not necessarily with the tightest gameplay. Due to the video formatting and how the matches were being played, this was more of a playtesting and just showing a general indication of how matches generally play out between Blue-White and Boros Burn. So there will be some missed sideboardings, there will be some play issues with timing and such due to the nature of how these videos were done. Also, I want to thank a new Patreon, Russell. He's a new Goblin Guide on our Patreon page for $1 a month. You too can see our sideboard guide updated on the 1st and 15th every month, which there will be a new one coming out, especially in the wake of the Mythic Championship and Hogak running wild for right now. Not quite sure what changes I'm going to make quite yet, but I have a pretty good idea of what changes are going to be made. And also a new Burn channel, Day 2 MTG. Those of you who are familiar with Pikachu MTG, Andrew, Day 2 Dryden has his own Burn channel, so if you're wanting more Burn content than what I do here on this channel, check out Day 2 MTG. I will have a link in the description down below. Help to continue to support the Burn community. And also, if you like the formatting of this particular video, which we'll be doing a bunch of matches from the Burn perspective against Blue-White Control, and you would also like to see the Blue-White perspective in this matchup, please leave comments down below and thumbs up. That way I know you guys enjoy this type of content. This particular content takes a lot more time than the normal just play through a league and record. So let me know how you guys think of this formatting and what can I potentially do to improve it. With that, let's get into the matches, and this is the deck we've been playing. The main thing in these matchups we're going to be doing is boarding in the 2 copies of Skullcrack and the 2 copies of Exquisite Firecraft. We'll be back in a second with a look over of the Blue-White Control deck list. Alright, we're back for the Blue-White Control deck text. So this is the list that we're playing against in the videos. Not quite the same as, say, Space Marine's list, but fairly similar. Notable things in this main deck is there's 1 of Search for Azcanta, 1 of Timely Reinforcements, a couple copies of Force of Negation. You have a 3-2 split on Narset and Teferi, the Time Raveler, which both cards can be relevant. There were slightly different sideboardings throughout the different matches, especially on the Blue-White side. The Burn side was pretty straightforward with what we were doing. Surgical Extraction, obviously this is a hedge against Hogak running wild. And then beyond that, you've got your Mana Leaks, your Timely Reinforcements, Force of Negations, 1 of Copy of Spell Snare, pretty relevant against Burn. Sideboard, a whole lot of tech that can come in against Burn. You got things like Dovin's Veto, Celestial Purges, Rune Halo can be pretty good against, especially stuff like Eidolon. Monastery Mentor gives you another angle of attack to close out the game more quickly. Timely Reinforcements is another life gain, and then obviously Baneslayer Angel. So a lot of stuff to bring in the matchup. It's a matter of what stuff you want to shave in the matchup, whether it be something like Vendilion Click, or whether it's 3 Fairy or Narset, Jace, a lot of the clunky cards. Still need some amount of card advantage from the Blue-White side to close out the matchup, but this particular list has a lot of tools against Burn, so I wanted to test it against this particular version, as it shows a lot of the new text running around, and also seems like a pretty good build against Burn, although I still think Burn is going to be slightly favored overall in the matchup. Anyways, you're here for the matches, so let's get into that. We're back for match number 1, game number 1. We'll be on the play of this one. This hand's a little bit sketchy. Keeping a 1-lander on the play would be risky. I do believe I end up keeping this hand, and it ends up... No, I end up mulliganing. Okay. Keeping 1-lander on the play, risky in the matchup. Especially if you don't hit another land. Hand was pretty good otherwise. I end up keeping this hand, and I think we pitch the Mountain. Yeah, because you generally want to leave your basics in the deck against Blue-White Control, as they have Past Exile and Field of Ruin to kind of attack us, and they get a Flooded Strand here. Pretty simple turn number 1. Do this. They see an opt. instant response in case they had something to play on the end step there. They go ahead and fetch main phase, which is a little bit weird. See a Glacial Fortress, we go ahead and Lava Spike them. They Logic Knot it, we go ahead and Skewer them. Untap, they play Timely, so that kind of puts us in a bit of a bad spot. It goes and heads and trades off here. So, one of the few times where Skewer or Searing Blaze ends up being relevant. They play Narset, find an Opt, play a Path here. That was a miscue on my part. I shouldn't have done that main phase because of Narset. That keeps us from drawing a card. Not exactly an intuitive thing, but I was hoping to find gas while they were tapped out. Place a Snapcaster Mage into Timely Reinforcements. We draw a Mountain, we play a Grim Lavamancer. Opponent plays Teferi. Attack with Snapcaster. Obviously we can't afford to trade off, but they have a Path to Exile. We play Riftbolt, but we're very far behind at this point. Opponent goes ahead and fires up Colony and gets in here, starts closing out the game. Lava Spike, they have a Cryptic Command. When they get to this point where they have a lot of their different axes going, it gets kind of rough here. And that's it for game number 1. Back for match number 1. Game number 2 will be on the play this time around. Other than the one miscue with the Narset during our main phase, that game was still pretty well played, I think. Don't think there was too many things we could have done differently. It's just sometimes when they find their main deck Timely Reinforcements, they find their main deck Timely Reinforcements. This game's a little bit slow for Burn, but generally speaking, double Eidolon's pretty good against the blue-white control, because outside of like Path to Exile and Spell Snare, there's not too much they could have to interact with us on turn 1. I guess Oust, but that still requires them to untap and play Oust. And the new Ice on Thin Ice or whatever can also deal with this for 1 mana. But generally speaking, this hand's pretty good, even against something like Timely Reinforcements, if we're able to find one of our 2 Skullcracks. Seems like a pretty solid keep overall. We also have Flood Insurance with Sunbay Canyon, a couple fetch lands. Go ahead and grab that. Tapped. Opponent just plays their land. It's possible I should have gotten the... This is absolutely brutal. Rune Halo. Probably going to name Eidolon here. Names Eidolon. Locks out like our best card in the matchup. Like we're burning ourselves the whole way. Opponent has another Timely Reinforcements. You know, Timely Reinforcements being like a 2 or 3 for 1, plus the fact that our Eidolon does us damage. Now our opponent can just kind of clock us here. Here comes the dudes. Fire off a bolt. Kind of have to try to go for the win this turn. We only draw a bolt. Kind of miss out, and now we're just kind of dead on board. So, and that is how blue-white control can win a match against Burn. You know, their cards lined up quite well. Drawing Rune Halo or having Rune Halo in their opening hand. Seeing a copy of Timely Reinforcements, which as we saw against the list we're playing is only a 2 of, even after sideboarding, so they're not guaranteed to see it. And we'll get back in a bit here for match number 2. Hey, we're back for match number 2, game number 1. We kind of dropped match number 1 due to opponent drawing pretty well for a blue-white control deck. This hand's solid. We have a 1-drop, or Lava Spike into Eidolon. Pretty solid, although I do believe we are on the draw this game, so that makes it a little less good. Let's go ahead and spike the main phase. Possible I should have fetched Bloodstained Mire, especially knowing the matchup. Go ahead and play Eidolon here. Opponent has a Detention Sphere to answer the Eidolon. They still take damage in the process though, so it's not all doom and gloom. Go ahead and fire off a bunch of burn spells. Pass a turn. Kind of obvious when we're shocking things in here that we have stuff to play. Do this while they're tap low. The only card they could potentially have to interact with us is Force of Negation. And now we kind of play the waiting game with them. Just go ahead and play a bunch of draw go. Basically waiting until we've drawn a bunch of spells and right before our opponent's Teferi is going to ultimate, unless they make any other moves like tapping low. This is going to be the turn we end up making our move. Go ahead and crack the Sunbay Canyon. Play Boros Charm. Opponent has a Spell Snare. Try to bolt in response. They have Cryptic Command. We untap. Play Lightning Helix. They opt, and that is the game. So this is the, probably one of the most common occurrences with Burn versus Blue-White, is you end up into this kind of draw-go situation. One thing you want to avoid, generally speaking, and I think this is a mistake I make in a later match, is you don't always just want to fire off all your spells immediately, especially when your opponent doesn't have 3 mana Teferi in play, where you're not restricted. Generally, the way you want to win once you get your opponent to a low life total is to get to a point where you fire off multiple spells on end step, and then untap and play multiple spells. So, we got kind of lucky there that we hit 4 spells. We were able to overload our opponent's counter spells. They did have both Spell Snare and Cryptic Command, so it'd be interesting to see what other cards they had. But we did get a little bit fortunate here, especially with Sunbay Canyon helping to mitigate our flood a little bit. So definitely cannot sing praises about Sunbay Canyon enough in these kind of grindier, controlling matchups. Anyways, we'll be back in a bit with with game number 2 here in match number 2. We're back here with match number 2, game number 2, and this is one of the mistakes I made a couple different times during sideboarding. I forgot to remove these Searing Blazes from the deck, so we have a higher deck count that we need to have. That said, this hand is a mulligan 4 landers, just not going to cut it against something like Blue-White Control. This hand's pretty solid. We've got, Goblin Guide, Swift Spear, a couple of burn spells. Forget what I end up putting back here. Guess I end up putting back the Skewer the Critics, which may or may not have been a mistake. Go ahead and play Goblin Guide here. Reveals Glacial Fortress. Not getting some card advantage off of us. Fetching their dual land on end step. Play a Goblin Guide. We play a Swizzle Spear. They see Timely Reinforcements. They play Snapcaster Mage. It's kind of a curious play that they would do that. Play Timely Reinforcements. I guess they want the card advantage from... This is an interesting spot. Here I could have gone Eidolon, or I could have played Swift Spear into Lava Spike, or Swift Spear into Riftbolt, not wanting to lose my creatures if at all possible. My opponent go ahead and trades off, chump blocks the 1. What do they have here? They have another Timely Reinforcements. That's absolutely brutal. Go ahead and attack here. They trade off with Goblin Guy. I want to make sure it dies. Go ahead and Boros Charm while we could. They had a Path to Exile, which we knew about, which was one reason not to play the Eidolon. Monastery Mentor, that kind of changes the equation a little bit, doesn't it? And Eidolon obviously comes down a little bit late here. Plays a Teferi, starts getting some monks. Try to kill that. They have a Dovin's Veto to protect it. So now we're trying to play the control game against a deck that we're not really designed to play the control game against. And their opponents just kind of do the cantrip thing. Just clear our guys out of the way and then just attack us for lethal. So, see how Monster Mentor or things like Geist of St. Traft in some of these post-board games can kind of change the equation. Obviously things like Baneslayer Angel or whatnot are threatening. Baneslayer and Lyra Dawnbringer, but Monastery Mentor and Geist come down a lot sooner and can put a lot of pressure on us, kind of changing the nature of the equation, because in addition to having to play through all their counterspells and planeswalkers, we also have to fight through, their other source of pressure, and that once again, that's kind of how these mid-range and control decks have to beat Burn, is they can't give Burn all day. They have to pressure Burn back. We'll be back in a bit here with game number 3. Back for game number 3, finally sideboarded correctly. We'll be on the play this one. So you saw that blue-white with the right draws is capable of beating one of Burn's better draws, at least on when Burn's on the draw. This hand's pretty solid. We have a 1-drop. These are usually comprised. Burn's best draws is when you have a monster, a Swiss Spear, or a Goblin Guide. And then 3 lands. One more than I like in the opener, but still a pretty solid opener overall. Some consideration leaving on Sacred Foundry there, but if we draw Inspiring Vantage, kind of a curious thing that they would shock that in there. Go ahead and play this out. Look like they could have Spell Snare. Yep, they had Spell Snare, kind of telegraphed that a little bit, I guess. Yeah. Lava Spike. Bolt. Skewer the critics, deal you a bunch of damage. Burn kind of doing the burn thing, putting them to 3. They have Timely Reinforcements, they do not. They have Teferi. So they're just dead. Wow, Force of Negation, and the Bolt got there. So Force of Negation kind of changes the equation. And obviously, Teferi being in play makes me have to play this on the main phase rather than like their end step or something, or during their upkeep or draw step. So, and Swift Spear alone wasn't going to be enough to kill them, so that's why I went for the Helix and the Bolt line. And obviously, with our opponent kind of low on cards, it would have to have like double Force of Negation. I think even in that case, we're in pretty good shape if they have to ditch to low 4 cards to answer 2 spells. You know, especially since we haven't flooded out or anything this game. But, you know, sometimes burn on the play, difficult for a deck like Blue-White Control to interact with that without having a Path to Exile or On Thin Ice or anything like that. So, and they still had an answer for Eidolon, you know. They were able to stop her turn 2 play, and we still killed them on turn 4 pretty easily. So, anyways, this has been John for MTG Nexus, finishing up match number 2. We'll be back here in a bit with match number 3. We're back here for match number 3, game number 1. We're on the draw, unfortunately, which kind of sucks. This hand's pretty good. In the dark, not knowing the matchup, obviously Searing Blaze is a good card. In this matchup, not so much. That leads on Flooded Strand. It's possible we're supposed to lead there on Sacred Foundry. Yeah, looks like we're just getting Path. Opponent ramping us a little bit. Suspend Roof Bolt, hold up Lightning Helix response. We'll go ahead and Helix them there. I'll put us ahead on mana, which was nice. Rift Bolt, Lava Spike. Sorry, I'm not trying to represent there. Snapcaster Mage Opt. Okay. Searing Blaze that. Must be low on resources or not finding what they need. Could have Cryptic Command up, play out Eidolon. Forces them to Logic Knot. We bolt in response. Do that to have the ability to fetch that. Play out Eidolon. One has to play Snapcaster, Logic Knot. And then we just bolt them in response to kill them. So, it's nice to draw setup cards like Eidolon to force them to tap out to deal with it, because otherwise they kind of get locked out under Eidolon when they're at 1 life. So, obviously a good sequence of draws. Once again, best draws for our deck is the 1-drops and the stuff, even when they have the answer. Their answer almost always is Path to Exile. You know, On Thin Ice or Oust are much less played, especially out of Blue-White to Control. So if you can force them to answer, the more you force them to answer, the more you can play the instant speed game on your choice as opposed to their choice, because when they get to choose the rules of engagement, often it's to Burn's detriment. When Burn gets to dictate the thing, obviously it's a lot better for Burn. So we'll be back here in a bit with game number 2. And we're back with game number 2. This hand's a bit of a dicey one, but the upside is obviously huge to keeping this hand. You've got double Swift Spear, double Bolt, a Rift Bolt, so a whole lot of 1-mana spells. I think we end up keeping this hand. I do, in fact, end up keeping this hand. Opponent leads on Hallowed Fountain. They cast an Opt. kind of bizarre that they would do that. We get to pressure them with Swift Spears. Couple ops from our opponents. They have a timely reinforcements. They do. Force our opponent to do that. Go ahead and bolt here. Deal them some damage. Finally draw our second land. Blocks. Suspend the Rift Bolt. Response. Did we respawn here? No. Might have been incorrect not to respawn there. So they have a mana leak here on instep. It's kind of, once again, trying to overload their mana when we have so many cards. They path our dude. See, a lot of people... I want to pause this kind of here. So a lot of people would say play Eidolon pre-combat. That way, if our opponent wants to path that, they're taking the damage from the Swift Spear. I would rather have the Swift Spear or the Eidolon resolve, or have one last path to exile for them to deal with it. And our opponent's already played a timely reinforcement, so this Eidolon getting down and sticking could be a real problem if they don't have something like a Jace or a Teferi here. And even then, that's going to open up a lot of things for us. Eidolon gives it sticks. Opponent with no responses. Get with Eidolon here. Celestial Colony and block. Sure. Taps them low on mana. Obviously, I could have bolted the Colonnade there, but I don't think that was worth it. Getting in 7 points of damage for them to have basically tapped low on resources to deal with Eidolon. We have a Dovin's Veto there. We untap. Cast a Rift Bolt, and they apparently don't have any other counterspells with their last card in hand. So, ripping real good here. Once again, that fast start with the Swift Spears and such, obviously very important. So, and we even beat one through a timely reinforcements, which is pretty impressive. And that's one of the things people talk about, the need for like 3 or 4 copies of Skullcrack against Blue-White Control. I don't know that that's a necessary thing, especially with Teferi in their list, the 3 fairy. That card makes it very, very difficult to always be able to hold up Skullcrack during their timely reinforcement sequences. Like, a lot of times they can go like 3 fairy plus it. It's really hard to justify spending 5 points of damage to kill a Planeswalker, then they untap, play timely reinforcements. Skullcrack's kind of nullified. So, something to consider when, creating your sideboard for against decks like Blue-White Control is Skullcrack isn't the be-all, end-all it once was. Exquisite Firecraft, we really haven't seen it in this pop up in this matchup yet in any of these games, but it's nice to have a couple of top decks in your deck that they just can't deal with. If they're at 4 life and you have an Exquisite Firecraft, they're just dead. So, anywho, let's get on to the next match. So we're back for match number 4, game number 1. We're on the draw again, which kind of sucks, but, can't always win the die roll. This hand is most excellent with double Goblin Guide, a couple burn spells. We have 3 lands, but 2 of them are Sunbaked Canyon, which is nice. I have redraws. Opponent plays Celestial Colonnade, which means our Goblin Guide's guaranteed to get in. Under normal circumstances, I would probably fetch Sacred Foundry here, but given the amount of damage we're likely to take if we don't draw any other particular lands, I think it's important to fetch a basic there. Our opponent must have kept a real bit of a clanker there. Search for his Canta ain't going to really do a whole lot. And tap. Detention Sphere, huh? There go the Goblin Guides. So they didn't have timely reinforcements, but Detention Sphere answering our things is pretty nice for them. But we got a chance to put them to 4 here. I'm just going to tap low for Teferi. And then I guess they're looking for a Force of Negation there. It's kind of an odd timing on the opt. And surprised they tapped out for 3 fairy there. Maybe they didn't have any other play lines lined up. Detention Sphere, they took 6 damage off of these Goblin Guys before they desphered it. But it was a clean 2-for-1, so sometimes Blue-White likes to use their life total as a resource, and Burn is one of the few decks that has enough haste and reach that can really punish blue-white control in these situations, and this kind of shows the situations where, like, the Teferi Time Raveler, isn't the greatest. That was their turn 4 play. They drew a card. They must have been looking for something in particular, but, sometimes when the burn player has the good draws, you just can't really afford to have this kind of no interaction on 1, no interaction on 2, detentions for your guys, play a 3 fairy, and then die. So it's one of the downsides of playing blue-white control is sometimes you don't have the early interaction and you just die. So anyways, we'll be back in a bit here with game number 2 and match number 4. Once again, this was another one of those games where I forgot to sideboard out the Searing Blazes as I was boarding in the Skullcracks and the Firecrafts. This hand is interesting. Now, number 1, knowing the matchup, and number 2, Sunbaked Canyon, I decided to keep the 4-lander. Double Goblin Guy is oftentimes difficult for specifically blue-white control to deal with. You saw how much damage they got in last game, so we're going to keep the hand. Sacred Foundry, here comes Goblin Guide. Opponent fetches in response. Apparently they have a path here. So they get to ramp us, which is nice for us. Opponent sees a Narset. I don't know how good that is in the particular matchup, but opponent sees a Logic Knot, probably looking for another path. This was a mistake here on my part. I should have cast Eidolon in the Great Revel. I just passed through the turn without thinking. Opponent plays Narset, so we don't get punished too terribly much. Get to Boros Charm them. Looks like they whiffed. I decided to knock Narset down here, down to 1, because, putting them to 11 is nice, but kind of restricting their ability to find a timely reinforcements, I think is quite relevant. We're flooding out here. We have Cryptic Command, tap the team. We go ahead and play Skewer the Critics, and Skewer the Critics, they're down to 4. And they cast Opt. I don't know if they're looking for like a Wrath effect there. But, mistiming the Eidolon kind of sucked a little bit, but in the end, it still had a pretty relevant effect on the game. And this Cryptic Command had to turn into basically Fog, but we were still able to hit them for 6 that turn with the 2 Skewered the Critics. So, it's always remember, especially when you have Swiftspear in play, it's not always necessarily right to play out your spells first main phase, especially if your opponent's getting to the point where they have Cryptic Command and such. Sometimes forcing your opponent to react to your combat step with your creatures, and then casting your spells in the post combat, while it can suck, if you miss like a point of damage with a Monastery Swiftspear here and there. Sometimes it's really important to dictate the tempo with your creatures in the matchup, and that's one of Burn's key advantages in the matchup. If you notice, a lot of the games we're winning from the Burn side are from the perspective of, when we're getting those creatures down, forcing them to react, and our opponent just can't hold up mana the entire time. They're having to tap out, to find answers. They're tapping low to planes to play their planeswalkers to dig for cards. We got a little bit fortunate that Narset whiffed this particular game. If they would have come up with a timely reinforcements, this game might have turned in a different direction. They still have 5 cards in hand. We're hellbent other than our Sunbaked Canyon and our next draw step. So, it's pretty relevant, but we did flood out, but we got a little bit fortunate. Obviously, we kept the 4-lander, which was risky, but I explained my reasoning for it, especially with the double Goblin Guide start. And you see this Goblin Guide still standing and did them a ton of damage, forced them with an awkward cryptic tap draw as opposed to being able to counter a spell. So gotta keep in mind that nothing is absolute. Just like always, mulliganing a 1-lander is never absolute, and most of the time, 95% of the time, I would say mulligan a 4-lander, but in that particular case with the double Goblin Guide hand, I think it was just too good to pass up. If you want to let me know what your thoughts are, once again, keeping in mind this is a playtesting session. This isn't a as serious as a tournament or some of the other video sets would be, but I am trying to kind of educate people in matchups, showing what's going on from the Burn side, how to approach it, at least how I approach it from my philosophy, and trying to show people that blue-white's still a pretty good matchup overall for us, although last couple times I played it, it seemed a little bit rough. Maybe that's just the quality of the blue-white control opponent. Anywho, let's get into our fifth and final match of this set. Once again, if you like what you're seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, and if you like this particular video style format, leave a thumbs up and leave a comment down below just to let me know that you enjoy this. As I said, this kind of video formatting takes a lot more time. Getting the cards to playtest these matchups, finding ways to playtest these matchups aren't easy. So any feedback you can give on this particular formatting would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to see the things from the blue-white perspective, please leave that down in the comment section down below as well. Alright, we are back for the fifth and final match between Boros Burn and blue-white control. This hand, 4-lander, got a Searing Blaze, we're on the draw. I think this is a pretty easy mulligan here. This hand's pretty solid. We got a Goblin Guide, we got ourselves some burn spells here. We've got 3 lands, one of which is Sunbay Canyon. We'll go ahead and pitch back one of the Sunbay Canyons here. We draw another land off the top, which isn't ideal. Opponent does the thing. You get an island off it, so it's almost like they're clairvoyant. They cast an opt. We know they have an island in hand, so that makes me wonder what's going on here. They're just playing a Snapcaster Mage out. Now, I could play Lightning Helix to kill this and then still get in for 2 here, but I opt to let it go. Perhaps it might have been correct to Lightning Helix there. Play Narset, find the Force of Negation. It's going to make it a little bit harder to burn them out. We Lightning Helix them, we Skewer the Critics them. We're looking pretty good here. Opponent obviously holds up. End up targeting themselves, which I didn't really notice. I guess their feeling was if they targeted us, that we would just bolt them in response here anyway if we had something. So I fire off the bolt, put them to 1. Opponent discards a Supreme Verdict. And ironically, if they would have actually gotten the spell from us, we would have been in really bad shape. Opponent brainstorms there. Starts to pressure us. Try to draw a land. Have to do that on our end step, remember. Bolting during our turn doesn't do us any good because they have Force of Negation. And now they play another Narset. Surgical Extraction, not exactly what. Call a great card. It's possible I should have Force of Negation us. So they're still at 1. So now they have an answer to creatures. This is kind of the blue-white deck doing the blue-white thing. Might have been incorrect to just play out my spell here. As I mentioned in an earlier portion of the video, sometimes it's incorrect to play your spells just because you can play your spells. When it has a spell snare, getting hit by all sides of the blue-white control engine. We got a Swift Spear, they have a Path to Exile, get our last land out of the deck, well, last basic land out of the deck. Opponent casting an opt here. Timely Reinforcements is a thing, puts them out of range, and then we're just dead next turn, so. Wow, blue-white stabilizing at 1 life, finding one of their main deck Timely Reinforcements, and then kind of the Super Friends going to town there, along with the Mendelian Click Feats. So, once again, something to consider. Maybe I was supposed to wait and try to hammer them all in 1 turn, even despite Teferi here. It's possible I'm just supposed to wait and try to cast multiple spells in the same turn, try to overload their mana, overload their counter spells and such. We forced them to use the Force of Negation, so it's really kind of hard to say how many counter spells they had up over there. We'd really have to see the other side's perspective. Once again, if you want to see that, leave that down in the comments down below, as I do have access to the gameplay from the blue-white side if you guys are interested in seeing that from the other perspective. Anyways, we'll be back in a bit with game number 2 here in our 5th and final match. So we're back here for game number 2 in our 5th and final match. So far, Burn is up 3 matches to 1. We lost the first match, which kind of sucked, but they did have timely reinforcements and such. This hand, if I remember correctly, I think I end up keeping this hand, and I think we end up getting punished by the one-lander here. But definitely a hand with a lot of one-drop plays. The one-drop creatures, obviously, huge keys in the matchup. Opponent plays that. We draw a second land right off the bat, play an Eidolon. Put them to, they see a timely reinforcements. That's not good for us. Go to combat, getting for some damage here. They play a Snapcaster. We really have no way to answer that. They play 3 Fairy here. So I didn't cast Skullcrack. I should have cast Skullcrack in response here. Now we just spent a whole turn wasting our mana. They should be at 9 right now, so let's keep that in mind. Yeah, they'd be dead here, wouldn't they? Yep. Me not casting the Skullcrack in response to that Teferi ends up costing us the game. I think ends up costing us the game. And we start going to town here. They do the block thing. Cast a Skullcrack, put them to 4. They Snapcaster back, timely reinforcements. Let's get an attack with everybody. Trade off for the Goblin Guides. We skewer them, put them to 6. Opponent with a Detention Sphere. Might have been incorrect to play the Goblin Guides, especially knowing that they had a Path to Exile. Maybe it was correct to just cast the Rift Bolt. Opponent finds a Narset. Find a Cryptic Command, so things are starting to look bad for the home team. Play a Monastery Mentor. They have Cryptic Command. Put them to 3 here. You see a Force of Negation. They just start rapidly closing out the game. They have the Spell Snare that we kind of knew about. Let's kind of play a bunch of dudes. And go ahead and go in for the kill. So, sometimes misplays like that cost us some problems. Sorry about that, I had to stop mute for a sneeze. But yeah, we should have won this game. Forced it to a game 3. Who knows what would have happened in a game 3, especially on the draw. But, you know, this is Blue-White's ability to come back and be resilient. Monastery Mentor is a key part of their sideboard plans. You know, Space Marines version had things like Geist of St. Traft, also problematic card as far as closing out the games very quickly. Sometimes just being able to turn that corner a little bit faster from the blue-white side. That's why these 3-mana Planeswalkers are so nice. Not only do they get them card advantage, but also puts quote-unquote pressure on opponents more quickly, as opposed to relying on Jace the Mind Sculptor or Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Obviously, those are still their hammers to kind of close out the game, in addition to like the Snapcaster Mages and Cryptic Commands and such. So, you know, overall, ended up 3-2 record against Blue-White Control in terms of matches. Got to see a lot of the resiliency of Blue-White Control, you know, going into some of these style of games. You know, we got to see Burn kind of do the one-drop creature thing. Got to see some of the games in between. There were some play mistakes here and there. I'm not going to deny that. Once again, this was testing, so it was a little bit more helter-skelter than, you know, just focusing on one match, one opponent at a time. So anyways, if you like this formatting, please let me know down in the comments. If you think this is just something you're not interested in, also let me know. This is something I'm considering doing forward, is doing more matchup analysis, deep dive analysis like this. But the problem with this is, like I said, this is far more time consuming. If you like the content you're seeing on the channel and want to support us, please consider visiting our Patreon page or visiting our Amazon link down below. Anytime you visit Amazon within 24 hours of using that link and making a purchase, it also helps to support the channel. So if you'd like to see the channel grow, also if you know anybody that's getting into Burn or Is It Phoenix videos that we also do on Fridays, please have them subscribe to the channel. We're getting really close to 1,000 subs, and once we get to 1,000 subs, the channel gets monetized, which enables me to be freed up to do a little bit more syncing more time, because it's obviously more valuable when you're getting a little bit back as well. So just being straight up with you guys, this has taken a lot of time and a lot of energy over the last couple years, so I appreciate all the support you guys give me. And as always, I hope this video helps you guys out as much as it helped me out. This has been John for MTG Nexus, and don't forget to check out Day 2 Dryden's new Magic page. The link will be down below. He is doing Burn content over there. He's now separated from Nikachu MTG, so don't forget to check out his page as well.